It's another day of riding the bus, interacting with your friends, and you're getting ready to present your science project, right? You work really hard on it. Of course, you're nervous, so you have to use the restroom. The whole time, you're trying to get your hands, trying to wash them, and you just think to yourself, just look up, just imagine everyone in the underpants, read up from your notes, all the usual stuff. You go into the hallway and you're stopped before you get to class because you're in the hallway when the bell rang. Where's your ID? Well, hello to you too. What does my ID have to do with anything? I'm trying to get to class. My class is right behind you. Can you please let me go? You're looking around for your ID, but you can't find it. Crap. Did you leave it in the bathroom? Did you leave it under class? And your unease and the lack of not having an ID is interpreted as deviant behavior. So you're taken down to B40, the detention room. You're given a summons to appear in court at a time that's inconvenient because not only does it conflict with class, you may not be able to get a ride because your parent has to work. And on top of everything, you're in the school system for breaking a school rule. You've been introduced to the court system, and you didn't even get a chance to present your science project, so it impacted you in your grades. You are not you. You is an example of hundreds of racially diverse students considered poor performing and economically deprived, high crime saturated environments. And you were not stopped by an educator, you were stopped by a law enforcement officer. And for something minor, something that was an infraction upon the school, like I said, you're introduced to the court system and you've been criminalized by your school environment that's been operated by a culture of control. This great narrative is the same type of narrative that Kathleen Nolan orchestrates for readers in her captivating story based upon a study she did previous years back called Police in the Hallways, Discipline in Urban High Schools. It's a critical school-based ethnography, and so with that, it aims to do several things. It's looking to capture the understanding of students within a very punitive driven school environment, but not just the students, the educators, and the law enforcement officers. Her work being critical is looking at the context of policies, both criminal justice and educative, that have an impact on the school's culture of control, as she states, as well as trying to tackle our understanding of resistance, as well as our understanding of reproduction. Now, we're familiar with concepts such as social reproduction. I think in Learning to Labor, there was one where working class culture was reproduced by the schools, reproduced in the schools by the youth. And her work, by integrating herself in this environment, though she's much older, she's a white woman in a predominantly Black and Latino or Latinx high school, she was able to develop strong bonds with people by being really authentic and telling them about what she was doing and trying to capture their experiences. And so with that, she found two very strong things. One, that I believe, well, actually, before the one, everything that's embedded under that culture of control. She looked at how gun-free schools and policies by the Reagan administration, the Bush administration, and the Clinton administration led ways to zero tolerance policies, where a student brings a weapon to school, for example, then they get suspended, no questions asked, zero tolerance. But her study does a good job trying to capture the entire essence of what's happening, the true narrative, because let's say a student brings a box cutter to school, she gets suspended. But that policy, that brief that was written, doesn't talk about how one of her parents got hurt, so they can't work. So she's going after school working in their stead. So the parent doesn't lose a job, and they keep the lights on in the house. They're working long hours, so going to school, going to work, right, in high school. Tired, leaves a box cutter in her purse, walks in the school metal detectors, boom, suspended. And also talking about that environment. School students come in, walking through metal detectors. They develop an intimacy because of their close proximity to and a lack of regard and understanding the severity of law enforcement, because law enforcement is always present, but then students act in such a way that gets them in trouble, not because they're trying to be resilient or resistant to dominant modes of success or trying to act white or nothing like that. It's because they think the practices that are happening are unfair, because they see it being very criminal justice oriented and not being educative, or not being based upon restorative justice or something of that nature. So the student, for example, in the narrative I talked about, maybe if they had their ID, they wouldn't give the ID to the administrator a law enforcement officer, because that person could lose their ID and then they're in trouble, and then they can't get out of trouble because they don't have access to the ID, which was not their fault to lose, right? Or why would you stop me in the hallway? I'm trying to get to class. Yeah, I understand I'm not in the class when the bell rang. Well, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just trying to get to class, right? And so all in all, when we talk about social reproduction, it's not their cultural background, their ethnic background, their environmental predominant modes of environmental behavior aren't just reproduced in the schools by the students that's being seen as being deviant behavior. It's that the school environment with these policies creates a world where the law enforcement has more authority, and because they're not trained to work with students, they may misinterpret the actions of students, which then criminalizes the youth and situates them in this what should be a school, but it's almost like a penitentiary or a penal type system, where students can get in trouble in school and then have to arrive in court. So it's not just getting in trouble and going to jail, but also the threat of I'm gonna get this officer, the threat of I'm gonna write you up a summons, a threat of I'm gonna take you down to the detention area. So that the true consequences as well as the threat of things happening creates this culture of control in which criminalized youth are being produced by the actions of the policies and by the school administration. But it's not just that police officers are bad and educators are good. It talks about how educators, maybe have the best intentions, but over time may lose out on their moral grounding because they get saturated with so many students, or they just get fed up, or they understand they don't have the highest authority, so they just go along with what's happening. Or situations in which law enforcement officers want the best for students. They may know a student is involved in a gang, but that may be their best friend on the student-facing side, because they know if they can really connect with the student may develop a path out of a dangerous situation, for example, right? And so it continuously flips our understanding of how these things work. So it's not just students are good, law enforcement is bad. It's everybody, the students, the law enforcement, and the educators are all wanting the best for everybody, for themselves, but get stuck under the practices and policies that they must abide by, because those are the rules. And the second thing I talked about was that resistance. So earlier I talked about resistance. So it's not just oppositional behavior like I talked about. It was just students or Nolan describes students' actions as being a political action, right? Because if the school was operating under the veil of democracy, the students' voice would be able to be heard, the students would be able to showcase how they feel like something is unjust, versus being an authoritative type of rule where the students must listen to law enforcement no matter what. And if we were being under the force of tyranny, we would want to voice our actions, or not voice our actions, but voice our discontent with it as well. All in all, I think it's a very powerfully written ethnography, especially the researcher being racially diverse, or not being racially diverse, but being racially different from a lot of people that she worked with. She did a lot of interviews, about 33 interviews with students and group interviews, and talking with administrators and faculty, and really dove deep to kind of unearth some lived realities, which is the most important thing, because I think the best thing she did in terms of the study was number checking, because she talked in detail about what she was doing with youth, with kids, and the kids themselves were like, I don't like the idea of being a research participant or being a subject of research. And she was like, well, what do you think you should be called, or what do you think I should call you? He was like, besides their name, he was like, living proof. And I think that's what this ethnography is. I think this ethnography, which would be the same name of the study that actually is called, is living proof that that even if you have the best intentions, the structures and the policies around you that create a culture of control can really demean people's opportunities to move forward in life and obtain or be able to utilize all their capabilities in any type of opportunities are given to them. I wish I had more time to talk in detail about it. I feel like I didn't give a really good overview of the entire book, but all in all, Police in the Hallways is a very powerfully written ethnography. I implore everyone to read it, to look at it, give it a chance. My name is Peter B.O. Jeffy, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me in my freestyle of a book review video thing. All right, y'all have a good one.